Welcome back into the Collegian YouTube channel. Evan Patrick here, joined by Justin Morgenstein. And Penn State has just lost to Nebraska in Lincoln, and they've dropped to 0-4 for the first time since 2001. I don't think anyone could have seen this coming. It's kind of crazy to imagine that Penn State is now sitting at the bottom of the Big Ten standings without a win a month into this weird season that we're experiencing here in college football. This game was really just a lot like every single game Penn State's played this season. They got crushed in the first half, and they showed a lot of life in the second half. But in the end, they didn't have enough to bring back the win. And I mean, this was ugly in the first half, ugly enough to the point where Sean Clifford was finally benched for Will Levis after 2 turnovers and another fumble that led directly to a score. Justin, what went wrong for Clifford, and how did Will Levis respond?
Yeah, so you kind of sense that Clifford, even starting last week, was on thin ice regarding his job security. And once he committed those 2 turnovers, which the second one led to the score, obviously, I think they had no choice but to bring Levis in. But I think that Will Levis, while obviously, of course, not being the most polished passer, he was extremely competitive today. Gave Penn State all the chance they could in the second half. I mean, really made some positive plays for them and got guys like Fryermuth and Parker Washington involved, guys who are going to make plays. So I thought that Levis actually did as good of a job really as he could have with, managing that situation, especially with the deficit they were facing once he came in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting to think like what this game maybe would have looked like for Penn State had Levis been the starting quarterback from the get-go. I mean, he took care of the ball really well. He added a lot to the run game. He was clearly more of a threat in the RPO than Sean Clifford was. But I mean, in the end, yeah, I mean, it wasn't enough for Penn State. And I mean, if you only count the second half of games this season, if you only played the second half, Penn State might be the #1 team in the country right now. They've won every single second half that they've played. They've won, I believe it's now 3 total games where they've had more yards than their opponent that they've dropped. And so I mean, it's kind of crazy to see Penn State's outscoring its opponents by 40 points in second half of games this season, but they're getting outscored 93-26 overall in first halves. It's been a clear issue. I mean, James Franklin just right now after the game, his press conference, he's pointing to a lot of the turnovers, lack of running game, which they started to develop a bit more this week. But I mean, they're putting themselves in a position where they're in a hole that's just too deep to climb out of, despite these strong second half showings that we've seen now for 4 straight weeks. But Penn State sits at 0-4 for the first time since 2001 with a game in Beaver Stadium against Iowa on the horizon. That's going to do it for us. Be sure to follow all of our content on our website at collegian.psu.edu and on Twitter at PSU Footblog.